Those roses are coming out tomorrow, Mr. Rivera, or you'll face daily fines starting at $500. Patricia Kellerman stood in my backyard, waving a violation notice while my dinner guest watched from the patio. The HOA has zero tolerance for unauthorized plantings. I glanced at the flooding sprinkler heads behind her, illegal direct taps into the city main that I'd installed commercial systems to avoid for 15 years. You might want to check your own water connections before worrying about my roses, Patricia. The smugness flickered from her face for just a moment. If you've ever felt that surge when catching a bully in their own game, hit subscribe now. This confrontation is about to become a masterclass in strategic patience. My name is Marcus Rivera, and I've been designing commercial irrigation systems since college. What Patricia doesn't know is that I helped install half the water infrastructure in this neighborhood, including the system she's been illegally modifying. My father taught me that water always finds the truth, just like justice. These aren't just any roses. Dad planted them during his final summer, weak from chemotherapy, but determined to leave something beautiful behind. Heritage roses from his family's farm in Mexico, each bush representing a memory he wanted preserved. When he died that fall, these flowers became my promise to honor everything he'd sacrificed for our family. Mr. Chen here was just telling me about your landscaping contract, I said, nodding toward David, who shifted uncomfortably at my patio table. $80,000 annually, right? That's a significant investment in community beautification. Patricia's eyes narrowed. What's your point? Just wondering how the HOA justifies spending that much on landscape maintenance while harassing residents about 15-year-old memorial gardens. I touched one of Dad's rose petals, still damp from the evening watering, especially when those same residents are irrigation professionals who notice irregularities. David cleared his throat. Marcus, maybe we should... The rules apply to everyone equally, Patricia interrupted, but her voice carried less authority now. No exceptions for sob stories. Drop a like if you've ever wanted to stand up to unreasonable rules like this, and subscribe to see how this strategy plays out. That's when I noticed Elena Vasquez peering over her fence, fear written across her weathered face. She'd been targeted too, her herb garden facing similar threats despite providing medicine for her diabetes. Patricia wasn't enforcing rules. She was systematically targeting Hispanic families while ignoring identical violations at houses where wealthier, whiter residents lived. These roses were here when you became board president, I said quietly. 15 years of compliance, 15 years of neighborhood beautification, 15 years of honoring a man who worked himself to death building irrigation. Systems for developments just like this one. Patricia stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. I don't care about your father's roses or his sob story. Tomorrow they're gone. Or, I'll make your life so difficult you'll wish you'd never moved to Willowbrook Estates. Behind her, the illegal sprinkler connection continued flooding the common area, wasting hundreds of gallons while she threatened a man about memorial flowers. The irony wasn't lost on me, and judging by David's expression, it wasn't lost on him either. You know what's interesting about irrigation systems? I asked, watching water pool around Patricia's designer shoes. They leave evidence, paper trails, permit records, water usage patterns that tell stories about who's following regulations and who's improvising. Her face reddened. Are you threatening me? Just making conversation about water management with someone who clearly values proper procedures. I gestured toward the flooding behind her. Speaking of which, you might want to address that safety hazard before someone gets hurt. Patricia spun around, noticing the pooling water for the first time. That's been scheduled for repair. Since when? That's none of your business. David stood from the patio table, his expression troubled. As the contractor responsible for the HOA's landscaping, he knew those connections weren't on any approved maintenance schedule. More importantly, he'd just witnessed Patricia's true nature, the racism barely concealed beneath her rule enforcement. Patricia, David said carefully, maybe we should discuss this at next week's board meeting instead of disrupting Marcus's evening. She whirled toward him. Don't tell me how to handle violations in my community. My community, not our community, not the residents' community, her community. Where are you watching from? Because Patricia Kellerman just made the mistake of threatening a man who knows exactly where all the water flows in Willowbrook Estates, and she has no idea what's coming. The next morning, I walked Willowbrook Estates with my phone camera, documenting what Patricia called equal enforcement. The Henderson's sprawling vegetable garden covered twice the square footage of my roses, but their violation notice folder remained empty. 3 houses down, decorative bamboo screening blocked sightlines just like Elena's herbs, yet only Elena faced removal demands. I knocked on her door, finding her hands shaking as she poured coffee. Mijo, she came by again yesterday evening, said my diabetes herbs make the neighborhood look unprofessional. Elena's voice barely rose above a whisper, decades of discrimination teaching her to keep her head down. What exactly did she say about the herbs? That medical necessity doesn't override architectural standards, that if I needed medication, I should buy it from a pharmacy like normal people. Elena's weathered fingers traced patterns on her kitchen table. She doesn't understand these herbs kept my abuela alive when doctors wouldn't treat Mexican women. I photographed Elena's modest raised beds through her window, neat rows of medicinal plants that would have made any gardening magazine proud. Then, I walked to the Hendersons' yard and captured their sprawling tomato jungle, complete with stakes, trellises, and a greenhouse that definitely wasn't in any approved architectural plans. Notice anything? I muttered to myself, reviewing the photos. Patricia's pattern was becoming crystal clear. At the mailbox cluster, I overheard Mrs. Patterson complaining to her neighbor about the HOA's landscaping costs. $80,000 annually for what? My sprinklers haven't worked properly in months. $80,000. David's contract. I continued documenting, finding violation after violation that Patricia ignored when the homeowner's last name was Johnson, Anderson, or Smith. But families named Rivera, Vasquez, and Martinez received detailed citations for identical infractions. She wasn't enforcing rules, she was enforcing who belonged. The Kowalski house displayed the most telling evidence. Their front yard featured an elaborate rose garden with heritage varieties nearly identical to my father's, planted around the same time, maintained with the same care. I photographed everything, my irrigation expertise noting other irregularities. Water pressure variations suggested unauthorized connections throughout the development, but Patricia only targeted certain addresses for water usage violations. The technical evidence was building alongside the discrimination pattern. Walking past the community center, I spotted David's landscaping trucks servicing the HOA's common areas. His crews moved efficiently, but I noticed their uncomfortable body language around certain houses, the same ones receiving Patricia's harassment. They knew something was wrong. Elena caught up with me near the neighborhood entrance. Marcus, there's something else. Last month's HOA meeting, Patricia mentioned the landscaping contract renewal, said the board was considering changes. What kind of changes? Cost-cutting measures, maybe finding a cheaper contractor. Elena glanced around nervously. She said David's company was getting expensive, that she had other options. That stopped me cold. Patricia was threatening David's livelihood while using him as enforcement muscle. The $80,000 contract wasn't just revenue. It was leverage. She was manipulating both sides, keeping David compliant through financial pressure while terrorizing residents through selective enforcement. I thought about David's expression the previous night, watching Patricia's true nature emerge. He'd built his business on community relationships, not discrimination enforcement. But Patricia held his largest contract hostage, forcing him to choose between financial survival and moral principles. Elena, who else has been targeted recently? She rattled off 6 names, all Hispanic families, all facing different violations for identical landscaping choices their neighbors displayed without consequence. Patricia was systematically pushing out anyone who didn't fit her vision of Willowbrook Estates. Walking back toward my house, I passed my father's roses one more time. They stood defiant in the morning sun, roots deep in soil Dad had prepared with his own hands. He'd chosen this neighborhood believing America offered equal treatment under equal rules. Patricia was proving him wrong, but she'd made a crucial mistake. By threatening David's contract while discriminating against his former employee, She'd created an enemy with inside knowledge and moral motivation. The $80,000 pressure point worked both ways. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Can we talk privately? Something's bothering me about last night." The alliance was forming naturally, just as I'd hoped. Patricia's greed and racism were about to cost her everything, and she didn't even know it yet. David stared at the Willowbrook Estates contract spread across his desk, the $80,000 figure seeming to mock him in the morning light. His fingers drummed against the mahogany surface, a nervous habit his wife always noticed when he was wrestling with difficult decisions. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he hadn't moved from his chair since arriving at Chin Landscaping's office. His crew supervisor knocked and entered without waiting. "Boss, we got a problem with the Willowbrook account." "What now?" David's voice carried exhaustion he hadn't felt in years. "Rodriguez and Martinez are asking to be reassigned. They're tired of that HOA lady watching them like hawks, making comments about proper work ethic and staying in line. Yesterday she told Rodriguez his equipment was too loud, but only when he was working near the Hispanic families' houses." David's jaw tightened. He'd built Chen Landscaping on treating every client and employee with respect, regardless of background. His grandfather's immigration from Taiwan had taught the family that dignity mattered more than convenience. But Patricia's behavior was forcing him to choose between principles and payroll. "Tell them to finish this week's schedule. I'll handle Patricia." The supervisor hesitated. "There's more. She's been asking questions about your relationship with that Rivera guy. Wants to know if we've done any work at his house, how long you've known him, whether he's ever been on our payroll." "She what?" David stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward into the window. "She's investigating my personal friendships now?" "That's not all. She mentioned something about reviewing our contract for compatibility issues and whether the board might consider other landscaping options next quarter." The threat landed like a physical blow. David sank back into his chair, understanding Patricia's game perfectly. She was testing his loyalty, demanding he choose between Marcus's friendship and his business survival. The contract renewal was 3 months away. Plenty of time for her to find cheaper alternatives if he didn't fall in line. His phone buzzed with his wife's ringtone. "Hi, Linda. How did last night go? You seemed quiet when you got home." Linda's voice carried the warmth that had anchored him through 20 years of marriage and business challenges. David found himself telling her everything: Patricia's behavior, Marcus's situation, the discrimination he'd witnessed, the threats to his contract. Linda listened without interruption, but he could hear her sharp intake of breath when he described Patricia's comments about certain people. "David, this sounds exactly like what happened to my family in San Francisco. The property management company that tried forcing out Asian tenants by selective enforcement of lease violations." "I know, but nothing. We swore we'd never let financial pressure make us complicit in someone else's discrimination." Linda's voice hardened with resolve. "How many employees do you have who look like Marcus? How do you think they feel watching you stay silent while their community gets targeted?" David closed his eyes, remembering Rodriguez's uncomfortable expression yesterday, Martinez's request for reassignment, the way his entire crew tensed whenever Patricia appeared on job sites. He was asking them to work in an environment that questioned their worth, while he prioritized profit over principles. "The contract's worth $80,000, Linda. We've got 12 families depending on that income. And how many families is Patricia targeting? How many people like Marcus are losing their homes because we're providing the services that give her power?" The question hung in the air like smoke. David looked at the contract again, seeing it differently now. This wasn't just business revenue. It was funding Patricia's discrimination campaign. Every perfectly manicured common area gave her more authority to harass residents who didn't meet her standards. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "Success built on others' suffering isn't success. It's theft with better accounting. I need to think about this." "No, you don't." Linda's voice carried gentle finality. "You already know what's right. You're just scared of the cost." After hanging up, David sat in his office surrounded by photos of successful projects, employee appreciation awards, and community service recognitions. Everything he'd built was supposed to represent dignity and excellence. but Patricia was forcing him to choose between financial security and moral integrity. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Can we talk privately? Something's bothering me about last night." David stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "My office. 1 hour. We need to discuss Patricia's real agenda." The WASH decision was crystallizing, scary, but necessary. Some contracts cost more than money. They cost your soul. An hour later, I walked into Rivera Irrigation Systems expecting a normal Tuesday morning, but Patricia Kellerman was already waiting in our lobby like a predator who'd found the perfect hunting ground. She held a thick folder of legal documents, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Mr. Rivera, so glad I caught you at work." Her voice carried across the entire office floor, turning every head in our direction. "I have some urgent HOA business that can't wait." My stomach dropped. She'd deliberately chosen my workplace for maximum humiliation, knowing my professional reputation depended on community relationships and client trust. Sarah at reception looked mortified, while my project manager Tom stepped out of his office to watch the confrontation unfold. "Patricia, this isn't the appropriate venue for—" "Oh, but it is." She opened the folder with theatrical flourish. "You see, when residents refuse to comply with community standards, the HOA has legal obligations to pursue all available remedies." She pulled out official-looking papers, waving them high enough for everyone to see. "Daily fines of $500, effective immediately. Property liens if payment isn't received within 30 days. The office fell silent, except for keyboards suddenly stopping their clicking. My coworkers pretended to work while obviously listening to every word. This was exactly what Patricia wanted. Public humiliation designed to break my resistance. "You have 48 hours to remove those unauthorized plantings completely. Root and stem, Mr. Rivera. After that, the fines begin accumulating whether you can afford them or not." Tom stepped closer, concern creasing his face. "Marcus, is everything okay?" "Just a neighborhood dispute," I said, trying to minimize the damage. Patricia's laugh was ice cold. "Dispute? Mr. Rivera seems to think HOA regulations don't apply to him. But I've discovered there might be other violations worth investigating." Her eyes glittered with malice. "Water usage irregularities, unpermitted landscape modifications, possible code violations that could affect professional licensing." The threat hit like a physical blow. She was attacking my irrigation contractor's license, the foundation of everything I'd built since college. One complaint to the state licensing board could trigger investigations, reviews, potential suspension of my ability to work. "You're threatening my professional credentials over memorial roses?" "I'm ensuring compliance with community standards through all available legal channels." Patricia's voice carried absolute certainty. "Perhaps your employer should know about employees who disregard legal obligations in their personal lives." Sarah gasped audibly. Tom's face darkened with anger, understanding that Patricia was trying to cost me my job along with my home, but their reactions also meant I had witnesses to her harassment campaign, professional colleagues who'd seen her threaten my livelihood over flowers. "Ma'am, I think you should leave," Tom said firmly. "This is inappropriate workplace harassment. I'm conducting official HOA business with a resident who's chosen to ignore legal violations." Patricia straightened her shoulders. "Mr. Rivera's personal choices reflect on his professional judgment, don't they?" She was escalating beyond property disputes into character assassination, trying to destroy my career because I wouldn't submit to her discrimination. But her overreach was creating a paper trail of harassment that extended far beyond neighborhood politics. 48 hours, Mr. Rivera. After that, every day costs you $500, and I'll be filing formal complaints with every relevant licensing authority." Patricia smiled with pure satisfaction. "I'm sure your clients will be very interested in your attitude toward legal compliance." After she left, the office remained uncomfortably quiet until Tom approached my desk. "Marcus, what the hell was that about?" "HOA power trip. She's targeting Hispanic families for violations she ignores elsewhere." "And she's threatening your contractor's license over garden flowers?" "Apparently." Tom shook his head in disgust. Document everything. That was workplace harassment, and we'll back you up if this escalates. He paused, studying my face. You've got options here, you know. People like her usually have skeletons of their own. His words sparked something dangerous in my mind. Patricia was so focused on attacking others that she'd probably overlooked her own vulnerabilities. And I had the technical expertise to find them if they existed. Thanks, Tom. I might need those witness statements. You got them. Nobody threatens my employees over memorial gardens. As I sat at my desk, Patricia's words echoed in my mind. Water usage irregularities, unpermitted landscape modifications, possible code violations. She'd meant them as threats against me, but they'd given me an idea. What if I turned those same investigative tools against Willowbrook Estates itself? That afternoon, I spread municipal water system maps across my desk, ostensibly reviewing infrastructure for a commercial client in the adjacent district. But my eyes kept drifting to the Willowbrook Estates section, where consumption patterns didn't match anything in my professional experience. The neighborhood's water usage showed massive spikes during non-peak hours, consumption levels that suggested either significant leaks or unauthorized connections bypassing the standard meter system. My irrigation expertise had taught me to read these patterns like a detective reading crime scenes, and something was definitely wrong. I pulled up the city's online permit database, cross-referencing every approved irrigation system in Willowbrook Estates against the actual water consumption data. The numbers didn't align. The HOA's common area irrigation showed consumption rates 50% higher than any system their permits allowed. That's impossible, I muttered, double-checking my calculations. No legitimate irrigation system could draw that much water without additional meters and backflow prevention equipment. Unless... My heart rate accelerated as I realized what I was seeing. Someone had modified the HOA's irrigation systems to bypass standard water meters, drawing directly from main distribution lines without proper permits or safety equipment. It was water theft on a massive scale, potentially worth thousands of dollars monthly. I opened the municipal engineering database I used for commercial projects, searching for approved modifications to Willowbrook's water infrastructure. Nothing. No permits for additional connections, no backflow prevention installations, no city approval for the consumption levels I was seeing. Patricia had been stealing water while harassing residents about unauthorized plantings. The irony was breathtaking. She'd threatened my professional licenses over memorial roses while operating an illegal water theft operation that violated every municipal code I'd sworn to uphold as a licensed contractor. The very expertise she'd tried to weaponize against me had revealed her criminal activity. I photographed every relevant screen, documenting consumption patterns, permit discrepancies, and municipal code violations. This wasn't just rule-breaking, it was potential felony theft of city resources, environmental violations from missing backflow prevention, and safety hazards that could contaminate the entire district's water supply. My phone buzzed with David's text. At my office. 1 hour. We need to discuss Patricia's real agenda. Perfect timing. David needed to understand that Patricia wasn't just discriminating against residents, she was stealing water while using his landscaping services as cover for illegal infrastructure modifications. This would give him concrete justification for contract cancellation beyond moral objections. I printed the most damning water usage reports, highlighting consumption spikes that coincided with David's crew maintenance schedules. Patricia had been timing her water theft to coincide with legitimate landscaping work, using his company's presence as camouflage for illegal activities. The technical evidence was overwhelming. Water consumption rates that exceeded permitted capacity by hundreds of gallons daily. Missing backflow prevention equipment required by municipal code. Unauthorized connections that violated both city ordinances and state water management regulations. Patricia's irrigation system was a criminal operation disguised as community maintenance. But the most damning evidence was temporal. The illegal consumption spikes had increased dramatically after Patricia became HOA president, suggesting she'd either initiated or significantly expanded the water theft operation. This wasn't accidental oversight, it was systematic criminal activity. I thought about Elena's trembling hands as she described Patricia's threats, about the fear in other Hispanic families' eyes as they faced harassment over minor landscaping choices. Patricia had been stealing thousands of dollars in city water, while terrorizing residents over memorial gardens and medicinal herbs. My father had taught me that water was life, that controlling someone's access to it was the ultimate power play. Patricia wasn't just discriminating, she was literally stealing the community's lifeblood while punishing residents for unauthorized plantings. The ammunition I needed was sitting right here in black and white: municipal water theft, environmental violations, safety code infractions that could trigger criminal charges, and massive civil liability. Patricia had threatened my professional credentials, but she'd handed me the weapons to destroy her authority completely. I gathered the printed reports, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. David was about to learn that Patricia's contract threats were the least of her problems. When city water inspectors saw these consumption patterns, her HOA presidency would become the least of her concerns. The hunter had just become the hunted, and she didn't even know it yet. David's call came as I was reviewing the water usage reports one final time. "Marcus, can you meet me at the city planning office instead? Patricia filed formal complaints about your landscaping permits this morning." My blood ran cold. She was escalating faster than expected, attacking my professional standing through official channels while I was still gathering evidence against her. The city planning office meant formal hearings, potential license reviews, public records that could damage my reputation permanently. How formal are we talking? Emergency compliance review. She's claiming your memorial garden violates multiple city codes and that you've been operating without proper permits for 15 years. David's voice carried genuine concern. "Marcus, she's trying to destroy you professionally." An hour later, I sat across from Planning Director Janet Morrison, while Patricia presented her case with theatrical precision. She'd assembled an impressive folder of photographs, property surveys, and regulatory citations designed to paint my father's roses as a dangerous code violation. Mr. Rivera's unauthorized landscaping modifications present clear violations of municipal drainage requirements, Patricia announced, spreading photos across the conference table. These plantings interfere with established water management systems and create potential liability for the entire neighborhood. I studied her evidence, noticing immediately that she'd photographed my roses from angles that concealed the professional drainage work Dad had installed. Her pictures made the garden look haphazard and potentially problematic, when the reality was completely different. "Ms. Morrison, may I respond to these allegations?" "Of course, Mr. Rivera. This is your opportunity to address the complaints." I pulled out my own photos showing the careful drainage systems, proper plant spacing, and professional installation details Patricia had deliberately omitted. My father was a professional landscaper who installed this garden according to all applicable codes 15 years ago. The drainage actually improves water management compared to the original lawn installation. Patricia's smile faltered slightly as Morrison examined my counter-evidence, but she recovered quickly, producing her trump card. "The HOA has recently discovered additional water usage irregularities that suggest Mr. Rivera may be operating unpermitted irrigation and systems on his property." "That's completely false," I said, but Morrison was already taking notes about water usage irregularities. Patricia was using her own criminal activity as justification to attack me, knowing I couldn't reveal my evidence without compromising the investigation I was building. "Mr. Rivera, we'll need to schedule a formal property inspection to verify compliance with current municipal codes," Morrison said. "In the meantime, I recommend avoiding any modifications to the disputed landscaping until we can resolve these questions." Patricia's satisfied smirk made my hands clench under the table. She'd forced me into defensive position, using official channels to legitimize her harassment while I was still preparing my counterattack. The hearing would create public records of her complaints, potentially damaging my professional reputation, even if I eventually prove my innocence. "There's one more concern," Patricia continued. "Mr. Rivera's attitude toward regulatory compliance raises questions about his professional fitness as a licensed irrigation contractor. Perhaps the state licensing board should review whether someone who ignores municipal codes in their personal property should be trusted with commercial water systems." The direct threat to my contractor's license hit like a physical blow. She was weaponizing the regulatory system against me, using my own profession as leverage to force compliance with her discrimination campaign. After the hearing, I drove home in stunned silence, understanding finally that Patricia wasn't just targeting my roses, she was systematically destroying my life to make an example for other Hispanic families. The technical evidence against her was powerful, but she was moving faster than I'd anticipated. That evening, I stood in my backyard touching Dad's rose petals while Elena watched from her fence. She'd heard about my hearing through the neighborhood gossip network, her face reflecting the fear we all carried now. "Mijo, maybe you should just remove the garden. She's too powerful to fight." "No." The word came out harder than I'd intended. Dad planted these roses because he believed America rewarded hard work and honest living. Patricia's proving him wrong, but I won't let her win. I thought about the water usage reports in my office, the evidence of criminal activity Patricia had hidden while attacking innocent residents. She'd escalated this conflict beyond personal harassment into professional destruction, but her overreach had given me the weapons needed to fight back. Tomorrow, I would start using everything my expertise could provide. Patricia wanted a war over water and authority, but she'd chosen to fight an irrigation specialist who knew exactly where all the pipes were buried. The roses stirred in the evening breeze, and I could almost hear Dad's voice. "Sometimes you have to defend what matters, Mijo, no matter the cost." The knock on my kitchen door came after 10 p.m., soft but insistent. I found David standing on my back porch, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked like shame. He glanced around nervously before stepping inside, as if Patricia might be watching from the shadows. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble, accepting the coffee I offered with shaking hands. "And more than that, I owe you the truth about what Patricia's really planning." I sat across from him at Dad's old kitchen table, the same spot where we'd shared countless meals during my apprenticeship years. But tonight felt different, heavier with the weight of moral decisions that would define who we really were. "She called me this morning after your city hearing," David began, staring into his coffee cup. "Wanted to make sure I understood the situation with problematic residents who don't respect community standards." "What exactly did she say?" David's jaw tightened. "That you were just the beginning. She's planning to target every Hispanic family in Willowbrook Estates, one by one, until the neighborhood reflects proper values again." Her words, not mine. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. Patricia wasn't just enforcing rules. She was conducting ethnic cleansing through bureaucratic harassment, systematically removing families she deemed unworthy of her community. She mentioned Elena specifically, said the old woman's medicinal weeds would be next, followed by the Martinez family's decorative fountain and the Gonzalez family's children's play equipment. David looked up, his eyes reflecting genuine horror. "She's got a target list, Marcus. At least 8 families she wants gone within the year. And she told you this because she expects me to be complicit. My landscaping contract gives me access to every backyard, every garden, every potential violation she can weaponize." David's voice cracked with shame. "She wants me to document problems she can use against these families." I thought about Elena's trembling hands, the fear in other neighbors' eyes, the way Patricia's harassment had escalated into systematic persecution. She was using David's professional access as surveillance, turning him into an unwilling accomplice to her discrimination campaign. "There's more," David continued. "The contract renewal meeting is scheduled for next month, but she's already been courting other landscaping companies, cheaper options that won't ask questions about selective enforcement. She's planning to fire you anyway. Eventually, once she's eliminated the families she's targeting, she wants contractors who will help maintain her vision of community standards. I'm too expensive and too connected to people like you." The pieces clicked together in my mind. Patricia was manipulating David through financial pressure, while planning to replace him with more compliant contractors. She needed him temporarily for access and legitimacy, but his moral qualms made him a liability long-term. "David, I need to tell you something about those water usage irregularities she mentioned during my hearing." I showed him the municipal consumption reports, watching his face pale as he understood the implications. Patricia had been stealing thousands of dollars in city water while using his maintenance schedules as cover for illegal infrastructure modifications. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "She's been timing the theft to coincide with our service visits, making it look like legitimate maintenance while she's actually committing felony water theft. Your crews probably never knew. She's been using your reputation to legitimize criminal activity." David stood abruptly, pacing my kitchen with barely contained fury. "She's destroyed my company's integrity, made us unwitting accomplices to theft while forcing us to participate in her discrimination campaign. That's why I need your help. Your insider knowledge combined with this technical evidence could bring down her entire operation." "What do you need?" "Details about the water system modifications, timing of when the illegal connections were installed, any communications about the contract renewal or her targeting plans." I spread the water usage reports across the table. "But David, helping me means sacrificing the contract, $80,000 in annual revenue." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence of Patricia's criminal activity. When he looked up, his expression carried the resolve I remembered from our early working days together. "My grandfather built Chen Landscaping on the principle that honest work creates honest relationships. Patricia's turned us into tools for theft and discrimination." David's voice strengthened with conviction. "Some contracts aren't worth keeping." "You're sure about this? Your employees, your family's financial security? My employees deserve better than working for criminals. My family deserves better than blood money from discrimination." David extended his hand across the table. "Let's destroy her, Marcus. Let's use everything we know to bring Patricia Kellerman down." I transformed my home office into a war room over the weekend, spreading municipal codes, water usage reports, and technical specifications across every available surface. The evidence against Patricia was damning, but it needed professional documentation that would withstand legal scrutiny and regulatory review. My irrigation expertise guided me through each violation with methodical precision. The HOA's common area systems showed unauthorized connections bypassing 3 separate water meters, potentially worth thousands in monthly theft. Missing backflow prevention equipment violated city safety codes and created contamination risks for the entire district's water supply. "David, look at this," I said, pointing to consumption spikes on my laptop screen. "These usage patterns coincide exactly with your crew's maintenance schedules from the past 6 months. He leaned over my shoulder, studying the data with growing anger. "She's been timing the theft to when my people are on site, using our legitimate work as cover for criminal activity. Gets worse. See these modifications to the main distribution line?" I highlighted sections of the municipal infrastructure map. Someone installed illegal taps without permits, proper materials, or safety equipment. This isn't just theft, it's potential felony endangerment of public water systems. David photographed everything with his phone, building his own evidence file for contract cancellation. "My crews never touch those connections. We only service the legitimate irrigation heads and controllers," which gives you plausible deniability and legal grounds for terminating the contract. I pulled up Patricia's threatening emails from the past week. Combined with her hostile work environment and discrimination demands, you've got ironclad justification for cancellation without breach penalties. We worked through Saturday night, cross-referencing permit databases, municipal codes, and water usage patterns. The technical report grew to 37 pages of detailed violations, each one documented with photographic evidence, regulatory citations, and consumption data that prove systematic theft. Elena arrived Sunday morning with a thermos of coffee and intelligence from her network of neighborhood friends. "Mijo, I talked to the families Patricia's been targeting. 6 are willing to speak publicly about her harassment, but they're scared of retaliation." "They won't need to worry about retaliation much longer," I said, showing her the technical evidence. "Patricia's about to face criminal charges that'll end her HOA presidency permanently." "Dios mío," Elena susurró, estudiando la documentación del robo de agua. "She's been stealing from the city while threatening us about our gardens?" David looked up from his contract cancellation letter. "It's worse than that. She's been using my company's reputation to legitimize the theft while forcing us to participate in her discrimination campaign." "When do we spring the trap?" Elena asked. "Two-phase attack," I explained, pointing to the calendar. "David's contract cancellation hits Tuesday morning, same day I file formal complaints with city water department and building inspectors. The board meeting's Thursday night. Patricia will be dealing with financial crisis and criminal investigation simultaneously. David nodded grimly. I've got meetings scheduled with all 8 targeted families tomorrow night. They need to understand this goes beyond garden harassment into felony theft of public resources. What about the other board members? Elena asked. Some of them seem reasonable. They'll distance themselves from Patricia once criminal charges surface, I said. Nobody wants association with water theft and civil rights violations. The technical documentation was complete, 37 pages that would destroy Patricia's authority and possibly send her to federal prison. Water theft from municipal systems carried serious criminal penalties, especially when combined with safety violations that endangered public health. David finished his contract cancellation letter, citing hostile work environment, discrimination demands, and recently discovered irregularities in HOA water systems that created liability concerns for his company. Legal language that protected him while delivering maximum financial damage to Patricia's operation. Marcus, I need you to know something, David said, sealing the letter in an envelope marked for certified delivery. Canceling this contract might cost me the business. $80,000 in annual revenue doesn't replace itself easily. You sure about this? My grandfather taught me that some principles matter more than profit. Patricia's turned my company into an accessory to theft and discrimination. David's voice carried quiet conviction. I'd rather go bankrupt honestly than prosper through someone else's suffering. Elena squeezed his shoulder. Mijo, you're doing the right thing. These neighborhoods need people who will stand up to bullies like Patricia. I studied the evidence one final time. Technical documentation that proved felony water theft, discrimination patterns that violated civil rights laws, safety violations that endangered public health. Patricia had threatened my professional credentials over memorial roses while operating a criminal enterprise that stole thousands in city resources. Tomorrow we start the counterattack, I said, stacking the reports in presentation order. By Thursday night, Patricia Kellerman will be facing criminal charges instead of harassing Hispanic families. The alliance was solid, the evidence overwhelming, the timing perfect. Patricia's reign of discrimination was about to end with the force of technical expertise and moral courage. She'd threatened the wrong irrigation specialist. Monday morning, I met Elena at the neighborhood mailbox cluster for what looked like casual conversation, but was actually reconnaissance for our evidence-gathering mission. Patricia's discrimination had made residents fearful of being seen together, so we'd learned to communicate through seemingly innocent encounters. She's at the board office until noon, Elena whispered, sorting through her mail. Martinez family confirmed they'll speak publicly about the harassment, and the Gonzalez family has documentation of Patricia's threats about their children's play equipment. Perfect timing, David submitting the contract cancellation this morning while we document the water theft. We walked casually through Willowbrook's common areas, Elena providing cover while I conducted technical surveys of the HOA's irrigation systems. My professional eye immediately spotted the illegal connections Patricia had hidden behind decorative landscaping and maintenance sheds. Santa Maria, Elena breathed, watching me photograph unauthorized water taps bypassing the main meter system. She's been stealing right out in the open. Hidden in plain sight, I confirmed, documenting missing backflow prevention equipment that violated every municipal safety code. Most people wouldn't recognize these violations, but to an irrigation specialist, it's obvious criminal activity. The evidence was overwhelming, illegal connections drawing directly from city main lines without permits or proper materials. Missing safety equipment that created contamination risks for the entire water district. Usage patterns that showed systematic theft worth thousands of dollars monthly. But the most damning evidence was temporal. The illegal modifications had been installed during Patricia's HOA presidency, suggesting she'd either initiated or dramatically expanded the water theft operation. This wasn't accidental oversight. It was organized criminal activity. Elena introduced me to Maria Santos, whose herb garden faced removal threats identical to Elena's situation. She told me medicinal plants made the neighborhood look unprofessional, Maria explained quietly. But the Johnson family has a bigger vegetable garden, and Patricia never bothers them. Did she mention anything about other families being targeted? said she was cleaning up the neighborhood one problem at a time, made it clear that families like ours were the problems she intended to solve. I documented Maria's statement while photographing the irrigation violations around her property. Patricia had been timing her harassment campaigns to coincide with infrastructure modifications that facilitated more water theft, using discrimination as distraction from criminal activity. David's text arrived at 11:47 a.m. Contract cancellation delivered. Patricia's assistant confirmed receipt. Meeting with targeted families tonight at Community Center. Phase 1 was complete. Patricia would spend her afternoon dealing with the financial crisis of losing her largest contractor, while I prepared to unleash regulatory hell on her. Criminal enterprise. Elena and I continued our survey, finding illegal connections throughout the common areas. Patricia had created a sophisticated theft operation that bypassed multiple meter systems while maintaining the appearance of legitimate landscape maintenance. How much water is she stealing? Elena asked. Conservatively, 8 to 12,000 gallons monthly. At current municipal rates, that's felony theft worth several $1,000s annually. I photographed the most egregious violations around the community center. But the safety violations are worse, contamination risks that could affect the entire district's water supply. We gathered witness statements from 6 families Patricia had targeted, each story following identical patterns. Selective enforcement of rules that didn't apply to wealthier, whiter residents. Harassment campaigns that escalated when families resisted. Threats that extended beyond property violations into character assassination. The Martinez family showed me Patricia's written demands about their decorative fountain, accusations of water waste, while she was literally stealing thousands of gallons through illegal connections 50 yards away. The irony was breathtaking in its audacity. Tonight's community meeting will be crucial, I told Elena, as we finished documenting the evidence. These families need to understand they're not fighting just discrimination. They're fighting a criminal enterprise that's been stealing city resources while terrorizing residents. Elena nodded grimly. When people understand Patricia's been stealing water while threatening us about our gardens, they'll be furious enough to act. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Board emergency meeting called for tonight. Patricia's trying to find replacement contractor immediately. She's panicking. Perfect. Financial pressure was forcing Patricia into desperate moves, while I prepared to unleash criminal charges that would destroy her authority permanently. The timing couldn't be better. Her panic would make the evidence more damaging when city inspectors arrived. I reviewed the evidence one final time. Technical documentation of felony water theft, witness statements proving systematic discrimination, photographic proof of safety violations that endangered public health. Patricia had spent months attacking innocent families while operating a criminal enterprise worth thousands in stolen resources. Tomorrow, the counterattack would begin in earnest. By Thursday's board meeting, Patricia would be facing criminal charges instead of terrorizing Hispanic families. The hunter had become the hunted, and she still didn't know what was coming. Tuesday morning, I walked into City Hall carrying 37 pages of technical documentation that would destroy Patricia Kellerman's criminal enterprise. The Water Department office buzzed with early morning activity, but I'd scheduled this appointment specifically with Senior Inspector Janet Rodriguez, whose expertise in municipal systems matched my irrigation background. Mr. Rivera, thank you for bringing these concerns to our attention, Inspector Rodriguez said, reviewing my evidence with growing alarm. These consumption patterns suggest significant unauthorized usage. It's worse than usage violations, I explained, spreading the most damning photographs across her desk. These are illegal connections bypassing your meter systems entirely. Felony water theft, combined with safety violations that could contaminate the district's supply. Rodriguez studied the technical documentation with professional focus, her expression darkening as she understood the scope of Patricia's criminal activity. These modifications were installed without permits, proper materials, or required safety equipment. Who authorized this work? That's what I'm hoping you'll investigate. The consumption spikes coincide with HOA board meetings over the past 18 months, suggesting systematic theft rather than accidental oversight. Mr. Rivera, this is potentially criminal activity. We'll need to coordinate with building inspectors and possibly law enforcement. Rodriguez was already reaching for her phone. Can you be available for an immediate site inspection this afternoon? Absolutely, the sooner the better. I left City Hall knowing the regulatory machinery was now grinding toward Patricia with unstoppable momentum. Municipal water theft carried serious criminal penalties, especially when combined with safety violations that endangered public health systems. My phone buzzed with David's update. Patricia received my cancellation letter. Emergency board meeting moved to tonight. She's trying to find replacement contractor, but everyone's booked through winter season. The financial pressure was working perfectly. Patricia was facing immediate loss of her primary contractor during peak landscaping season, with no viable replacements available on short notice. The HOA's maintenance would suffer while she dealt with escalating legal problems. At 2 p.m., I met Inspector Rodriguez and Building Inspector Mike Chen at Willowbrook's main entrance. Both carried official cameras, violation notice forms, and expressions that suggested Patricia's reign was about to end permanently. "Show us the most egregious violations first," Rodriguez instructed. I led them directly to the illegal connections behind the community center, where unauthorized taps drew thousands of gallons monthly from city main lines. The inspectors documented everything with professional thoroughness, their growing alarm evident as they understood the criminal scope. "This is felony water theft," Chen said flatly, photographing missing permits and safety equipment. Multiple violations that could trigger criminal prosecution and massive civil penalties. "Gets worse," I said, showing them consumption data that proved systematic theft. "The timing suggests deliberate criminal activity rather than oversight or ignorance." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "We'll need to shut down these illegal connections immediately and begin criminal referral procedures. The district attorney will want to review this evidence." "What about the HOA board members? Are they criminally liable?" "Depends on their knowledge and involvement. But whoever authorized these modifications is facing serious criminal charges." The inspectors spent 3 hours documenting violations throughout Willowbrook's common areas, finding illegal connections, missing safety equipment, and consumption patterns that prove felony theft. Their official report would trigger criminal investigations and potential federal charges for endangering public water systems. "Mr. Rivera, thank you for bringing this to our attention," Rodriguez said as we finished the inspection. "Citizens like you help us protect public resources and safety." At 6 p.m., I watched from my kitchen window as Patricia's Mercedes pulled into her driveway, her face reflecting panic and confusion. She'd spent the day dealing with financial crisis from David's contract cancellation, while city inspectors gathered evidence for criminal prosecution. My phone rang with Elena's excited voice. "Mijo, Patricia just knocked on the Hendersons' door, asking about their landscaping contractor. She's desperate to find replacement services before the board meeting tonight." "Perfect. Let her scramble while the criminal charges develop." David's final text of the day confirmed our timing. Board meeting tonight at 7 p.m. Patricia's agenda includes emergency contractor replacement and addressing recent disruptions to community harmony. She's trying to frame you as the problem while her world collapses. I smiled, touching Dad's rose petals in the gathering dusk. Tomorrow, city inspectors would present their findings to the water district attorney, while Patricia faced her HOA board with no contractor, no authority, and no idea that criminal charges were imminent. The trap was set, the evidence overwhelming, the timing perfect. Patricia Kellerman's reign of discrimination was about to end with the force of municipal justice and technical expertise. She'd threatened the wrong irrigation specialist's family legacy. The Willowbrook Estates Community Center had never seen a crowd like this. Every chair was occupied, with residents standing along the walls and spilling out the doorway. Elena sat in the front row beside Maria Santos and the Martinez family, while David positioned himself near the back exit. The air hummed with nervous energy as Patricia called the emergency board meeting to order. "Due to recent disruptions in our landscaping services," Patricia began, her voice strained but attempting authority, "we need to address emergency contractor replacement and certain residents who have been undermining community harmony." She was trying to frame David's cancellation as my fault, painting herself as the victim of outside agitation. But the packed room suggested residents were finally ready to hear the truth about her discrimination campaign. "Before we continue," I said, standing from my seat, I think the community deserves to understand why Mr. Chen's company really terminated their contract. Patricia's face flushed. Mr. Rivera, you're out of order. This meeting is for addressing your violations and... My violations? I pulled out the technical reports, my voice carrying across the silent room. Let's talk about violations, Patricia. Let's discuss the illegal water connections you've been operating throughout our common areas. The crowd stirred uneasily. Patricia's confident expression flickered as she realized I wasn't here to defend myself. I was here to attack. You're deflecting from your own rule-breaking with baseless. The community center doors burst open as Inspector Rodriguez and Building Inspector Chen entered with official badges, violation notices, and expressions that meant business. The crowd turned as one, sensing that everything was about to change. Ms. Kellerman, Inspector Rodriguez announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. We're here to serve official notices regarding illegal water system modifications and theft of municipal resources. The room erupted. Residents gasped, whispered, and stared as the inspectors approached Patricia with formal documentation. Her face went white as she understood that her criminal activity had been discovered and exposed in front of the entire community. This is a private board meeting, Patricia stammered, but her authority was evaporating in real time. Water theft from municipal systems is a public matter, Inspector Chen replied, handing her violation notices. These illegal connections constitute felony theft and endanger public water safety. I stood again, holding my technical reports high enough for everyone to see. Neighbors, Patricia has been stealing thousands of gallons of city water monthly, while harassing Hispanic families about memorial gardens and medicinal herbs. The crowd's whispers turned to angry murmurs as residents processed the hypocrisy. Elena stood next, her voice carrying decades of suppressed frustration. She threatened to remove my diabetes herbs for water waste, while stealing water right behind my house. Maria Santos joined her. She said our gardens made the neighborhood look unprofessional while she was committing crimes. The Martinez family stood together. She wanted to remove our children's fountain for wasting water while she stole thousands of gallons. One by one, the targeted families rose, their voices combining into a chorus of resistance that had been building for months. The community was finally understanding that Patricia's rule enforcement had been criminal discrimination funded by theft of public resources. "These are lies and disruptions," Patricia shouted, but Inspector Rodriguez was all ready, photographing the illegal connections she'd tried to hide. David stepped forward from the back of the room, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Chen Landscaping terminated our contract because we refused to provide cover for criminal activity and discrimination. Ms. Kellerman has been using our maintenance schedules to camouflage water theft while demanding we participate in harassment of Hispanic families." The revelation hit like a bomb. Residents understood now that Patricia had corrupted their landscaping services to facilitate crime while terrorizing innocent neighbors. The $80,000 contract loss wasn't business disruption. It was moral accountability. Board member Jim Thompson stood shakily. "Patricia, if these allegations are true, we need your immediate resignation." "I'm not resigning over false accusations from troublemakers who..." "The evidence isn't false," I said, approaching the front table with my technical documentation. 37 pages of municipal code violations, water usage data, and photographic proof of criminal activity. Patricia has been stealing city water while threatening residents about unapproved landscaping. Inspector Rodriguez nodded grimly. "The district attorney will review these findings for potential criminal prosecution. Multiple felony charges are possible." Patricia's empire was collapsing in front of everyone who'd feared her authority for years. The woman who'd terrorized families over memorial roses was facing criminal charges for theft and endangering public safety. The community that had lived in fear was finally witnessing justice served with technical precision and moral courage. Patricia's resignation letter arrived by certified mail 3 days later. A single paragraph citing personal reasons and pursuing other opportunities. But everyone in Willowbrook Estates knew the truth. She was facing felony water theft charges, civil lawsuits from targeted families, and criminal referral to the district attorney's office. Her reign of discrimination had ended not with community votes or moral appeals, but with the cold precision of municipal codes and irrigation expertise. The emergency board meeting that followed moved with unprecedented speed. Jim Thompson, now acting president, immediately implemented anti-discrimination policies and landscape guidelines that protected memorial gardens, medicinal herbs, and cultural plantings. The days of selective enforcement based on residents' surnames were officially over. First order of business, Thompson announced to a packed community center, is restoring dignity and respect to our neighborhood. Every family belongs here, and every garden tells a story worth preserving. David stood at the back of the room, contract renewal documents in hand. Chen Landscaping is prepared to resume services under new terms that emphasize community harmony and cultural respect. No more surveillance, no more selective reporting, no more discrimination disguised as maintenance. The community erupted in applause. Families who'd lived in fear for months were finally breathing freely, understanding that their gardens, their heritage, and their belonging were protected by law and defended by neighbors willing to fight. But the real celebration happened in my backyard 2 weeks later, where Dad's memorial roses had become the unofficial symbol of successful resistance. Elena brought homemade tamales, Maria Santos shared herbs from her thriving garden, and the Martinez children played around their fountain that would never again face removal threats. David arrived with his crew supervisor and a bottle of champagne. To the irrigation specialist who knew where all the pipes were buried, he toasted, and had the courage to expose the theft while defending what mattered most. I touched one of Dad's rose petals, still amazed that flowers planted 15 years ago had sparked a community transformation. The heritage roses from his family's farm in Mexico had survived discrimination, harassment, and threats, their roots growing deeper with each challenge. "Your father would be proud," Elena said, joining me beside the garden that had started everything. "He planted these roses believing America rewarded honest work and dignified living. You proved him right." The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia had threatened my professional credentials over memorial flowers while operating a criminal enterprise that stole city resources. She'd weaponized regulations against innocent families while violating every municipal code that mattered. But her expertise in discrimination couldn't match technical knowledge combined with moral courage. Inspector Rodriguez arrived with final paperwork documenting Patricia's criminal referral. The district attorney's office is pursuing felony charges for water theft and endangering public safety. Your technical documentation made prosecution inevitable. What about restitution for the targeted families? Civil lawsuits are proceeding independently. Patricia's personal assets will likely cover damages, legal fees, and compensation for harassment. Rodriguez smiled grimly. She chose the wrong community to terrorize. As evening settled over Willowbrook Estates, I stood among Dad's roses, surrounded by neighbors who'd become family through shared struggle. Children played safely in yards where their heritage was celebrated, not hidden. Gardens bloomed with medicinal herbs, memorial flowers, and cultural plantings that told stories of resilience and belonging. David's landscaping crews worked respectfully around every family's unique expression of home, understanding that diversity strengthened rather than threatened community beauty. The $80,000 contract now funded harmony instead of harassment, maintenance instead of discrimination. My phone buzzed with messages from other HOA victims across the country, residents facing similar discrimination who'd heard about Patricia's downfall through social media. The story was spreading, inspiring communities to fight back against tyranny disguised as rule enforcement. Standing in Dad's garden, I realized he'd given me more than irrigation expertise and memorial roses. He'd taught me that some principles matter more than convenience, that technical knowledge combined with moral courage could defeat systematic oppression, and that defending what matters most sometimes requires everything you have. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. The roses stirred in the evening breeze, and I could almost hear Dad's voice. "Well done, mijo, well done."